What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. Sorry for the little bit of a delay getting on this morning. I clicked go live, and it told me I can't go live. So I'm glad that you're tuned in. We're glad that you're here. I want to tell you a couple quick things before I get into this morning's message. First of all, next Sunday, we're not doing a message. What we're going to do instead is Mosaic, great church that we're friends with, is doing a worship night, an outdoor worship night. It's bring your own chair, bring your own water. Come hang out. It starts at 6:30 over off of Exit 7 off of Route 100. It's going to be a lot of fun. Kim and I went last month. We went just by ourselves. We weren't sure about bringing kids. We weren't sure about taking people. We didn't know how socially distanced it was going to be. But here's what I want you to know. If you are distancing, if you are wearing a mask, if you're not comfortable being around a group of people, you will be fine. You can spread out. They've got a couple different parking lots that people spread out on. Some people had on masks. Some people brought chairs. Some people brought blankets. A lot of people brought kids. It was a great time to be able to hang out, worship together, and just spend some time. They didn't hand out anything. We simply looked it up on our phones, and we're able to have the lyrics and everything right there in front of us. But it was a cool opportunity to be able to worship together and just kind of worship in person. I don't know about you, but this new place where we find ourselves, this new quote-unquote normal, is exhausting. It leaves me wondering. It leaves me trying to figure out things. It leaves me just constantly searching for, like, how do I figure out the new pace and the new place and the new way to give myself grace, which is really what I want to talk to you about this morning, because I think if we're not careful, we find ourselves in a new place, but we haven't figured out how to give ourselves some grace to navigate it. And so it's really kind of sparked from a conversation I had with a friend of mine. I was on the phone yesterday with a good buddy of mine. He's got two kids, two girls, my kids' age. They're a little bit older. But he's like, man, we started daycare this week and it's been great. They're back, like, feel like a new routine. They're there Monday through Thursday, but we have half days on Friday. And so we've been keeping them at home on Friday. And I said, how did that go? And he said, well, they woke up at 7:15 and at 8 a.m. I turned to my wife and said, 12 hours till bedtime. Only 12 hours till bedtime. And I laughed about it, but he goes, dude, I feel like the worst parent out there. Like, how can I not deal with my kids for more than 45 minutes? And I don't know about you, but there's been times where I've felt much the same way. Like, what am I doing? And how am I figuring this out? And it's because instead of my house being a place of rest and a place to hang out with my family and a place to eat meals, my house is now my office. My house is now the place that nobody leaves. My house is now the kids' space and the time to hang out with the wife and the chance to catch up on, and the place where I'm going to have a Zoom call and hang out with friends. Like, my house has become the place that just everything I do exists out of. And I feel, if I'm honest, kind of trapped. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but it sounded like for him, it's like, man, I have so many things on my plate and I spend so many days where I run around exhausting myself and I can't seem to figure out why I can't get anything done. And I can relate to that. I don't know if you can, but I can, because there's a lot of days where I've tried to do 800 things and feel like I've gotten nothing done. And so we're glad that you're here. And I want to talk to you about how do we give ourselves grace in the new place that we find ourselves. It's going to be short. It's going to be simple, but I'm going to base it off a passage from Paul. Paul had grown up a Jewish religious leader. He grew up studying the Jewish faith. A religious leader. He was a Pharisee. He had memorized the laws. He lives out his life like really persecuting the church, and because they said, look, we believe this guy Jesus is the new person to follow. And Paul goes, no, that offends my religion. We can't do that. And Paul, then named Saul, begins to pursue it. Well, Jesus meets him, and you have this conversion where he literally changes his name from Saul to Paul, and instead of just trying to destroy the Christian church, he begins to just build the Christian church, and he does it in amazing ways. But then in 2 Corinthians, he writes this letter to a church. It's his second letter to the Corinthian church, and he's talking about reasons to brag and reasons to be humble and different things that he's been through. And he gives us this one verse, and I think it's so significant for those of us who are struggling, those of us who are battling this like temptation and tension of what do I do? How do I function amidst COVID, amidst transition, amidst everything going on in my life? And he says this: He says, God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And then I looked it up in the Amplified Bible. It's 2 Corinthians 12:9. I looked up in the Amplified Bible. Not always my favorite translation, but it's one of those that just begins to add a little bit, tries to help us understand a little bit more. And he says this. He says, God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My loving kindness and my mercy are more than enough. They are always available, regardless of the situation. For my power, God's power, is being perfected and is completed and shows itself most effectively in your weakness. So I want to encourage you to think about something. In a culture of virtue signaling, in a culture where everybody's trying to point out all the good things they do, all the right things that they've done, and hide all the baggage and things we feel like we can't get together, I want to encourage you to not virtue signal, but to vice signal. What if you began pointing out the fact that you're struggling too? When you have friends that complain to you, like I had a friend who vented to me yesterday, what if instead of saying, yeah, well, get it together, what if you say, yeah, me too? I get it. This is a weird world that we're living in. This is a weird situation that we're all going through. And instead of trying to point to all the good things you've done, what if we point to some of the struggles that we have and relate to one another? I think it's what makes a difference. I think it's what's made Element. I think it's what makes Mosaic. I think it's what attracts us to things like Joe Rogan's podcast, because there's not guys on there virtue signaling, just trying to point out all the good things and make sure we look good and make sure we sound good and all that kind of stuff. It's a group of people wanting to say, hey, I'm broken and I got some issues and I got some struggles and I got some tensions and I need some help, but I can get what you're going through because I'm going through some things of my own. And if you want to know the backstory on this, I think it's really interesting and adds a little bit to what Paul is saying. He says this. Oh, wait a minute. I got to kind of like break this down. So Paul's in the middle of ranting. The Corinthian church had been boasting, had been prideful. They're dealing with a lot of things of pride. And Paul basically, in a couple of chapters in the book of 2 Corinthians, comes to them and goes, if you want to boast, I can boast more. If those people want to boast, I have more to claim. If the Pharisees want to boast, I was a better Pharisee than they were. And he's just like going through like his pedigree and his history and his kind of like his schooling and all that kind of stuff. And here's what he goes on and says. He says, I must go on boasting. Although there's nothing to be gained, I'll go on to visions and revelations from the Lord. So he's about to tell us about some really weird supernatural things that he's experienced. He said, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up in the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of the body, I don't know. God knows. Now, here's the thing. We find out later this is Paul talking about. And he says, I was caught up into heaven 14 years ago. Whether it was in my body or in a dream, I'm not really sure. And I know that this man, whether in body or apart from the body, I did not know, but God knows, was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things, things that no one is permitted to tell. I will boast about a man like that, but I will not boast about myself, except about my weaknesses. Even if I should choose to boast, I would not be a fool, because I would be speaking the truth, but I refrain. So no one would think more of me than is warranted. But what I do say, but I refrain so that no one will think more of me than is warranted by what I do or say, or because these surpassingly great revelations. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. So in Paul's opinion, God has given him, or God has allowed him, that's a better way to say it, God has allowed him to have a messenger of Satan to torment him. He says, 3 times I pleaded with God to take it away from me. And I don't know about you, but there's been times in my life where I've been through some struggles and I've been through some temptations and I've had some frustrations where I've gone, God, please fix it. Take it away, address it, whatever you have to do, just fix the problem. And he hasn't. And Paul says, look, if that's where you are, I pleaded with God to take things away from me, and he didn't. Instead, God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. Paul's resolve in saying, I have struggles I don't like. I'm in situations I'm not comfortable with. I have things to be happy about and things to be frustrated with. And I prayed for God to address the temptation. I prayed for God to address the struggle. I prayed for God to take away my pain. And here's what God said. He said, his grace is sufficient for me, and his power is made perfect in my weakness. And Paul's resolve out of all that was this. He says, therefore, I'm going to boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I'm going to delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and in difficulties. Because when I am weak, then I am strong. And I'm going to hop back to the Amplified Bible because I love the way that it puts this last passage there. He says, I'll boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so the power of Christ may completely enfold me and may dwell in me. So I am well pleased with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties for the sake of Christ, because when I am weak in my own human strength, then I am strong, truly able, truly powerful, truly drawing from God's strength. What Paul would want us to know, what I want you to know today, is that as you try and figure out what this new place looks like, I don't want to call it a new normal because that's become a hot button topic. I don't really care. As you try and navigate what this new place looks like, whatever it is for you, wherever you're working, whatever it means, maybe some of you have gone back to work and you're like, man, I'm uncomfortable with this situation. Whatever that new place looks like, I want to encourage you to do two things. One, embrace the struggles that you're having. Don't hide from them. Don't run from them. Don't try and bury them away in a closet that you can never find. Just embrace them. Here's what they are. Here's what my issues are. I need help. Talk to people around you. Talk to friends. Talk to family. Talk to coworkers. Other people are dealing with it too. And then the second thing is, don't virtue signal. Don't try and point out all the things that you've done right. We all get it. Talk about the struggles that you have. And in that, I think if we'll take it one step further and take it to God, like if we'll continue the conversation, not just with our friends and with our family and with our coworkers, but we'll go to God and say, God, I'm dealing with temptation. I'm dealing with pain. I'm dealing with struggle. I'm dealing with issues. I believe we get what God promises, which is grace. And he may not take away COVID, and he may not change our work situation, and our kids are still going to wake up tomorrow morning, thank God. But maybe, just maybe, he'll give us what he gave Paul, which is confidence that his grace is sufficient for us. And his grace covers our struggles, and his grace covers our sins, and that his power that is at work, even if we don't see it, is made perfect when we're willing to embrace the weaknesses that we. Guys, I hope it's helpful. I hope that element is helpful for you right now. I am constantly trying to navigate what video looks like and what different things look like. I wanted to try something live this week, simply because I'm tired of recording 48 times. And so I hope this was encouraging you. I want to remind you of two things. Next week, no service. Remember, we're not going to meet. We're going to have a worship night at Mosaic at 6:30 next Sunday night. It's outdoor. Bring your own chair. Bring some water. Come have a great time. And then we're going to start a new series on August 9th where we're going to talk about how to deal with things in the transition. I want to give you a few practical steps to navigating this new place where we find ourselves. Have a great Sunday, and I'll see you guys next week.